This happened a few months ago, and I've been meaning to share it with you all. Every time I think back on it, I still chuckle. So I figured now's the time to finally post. For some context, I'm a boxer, been in the game for years, and spent my fair share of time training and fighting. It's what I do. But let me tell you, I've learned to stay out of bars full of guys who think their martial arts skills make them invincible. I'm not saying I'm the toughest guy around, but there's just something about people who act like they're untouchable because of what they've learned in a dojo. So here's the story. A few months ago, I was at this dive bar with a couple of buddies, just looking to unwind after a long week. It was a Friday night, the place was buzzing, but nothing too crazy. Just people drinking, laughing, and having a good time. I was at the bar, sipping a beer and catching up with my friends, when suddenly this guy, let's call him Mr. Karate, walks past me and bumps into me hard. Not just a brush, but a full-on shoulder check. Now, normally, I'd let something like that slide. I'm not here to start trouble. But when someone bumps into you and doesn't even acknowledge it, that gets under my skin. I turned to him and said, "Hey man, watch where you're going." He looked me up and down, smirked, and said, "What's your problem, dude?" I was already getting annoyed, but I didn't want to make a scene, so I just said, "You bumped into me, didn't apologize. It's just basic manners, man." Then he straightened up, squared his shoulders, and puffed out his chest like he was about to give a TED talk on how badass he was. "I'm a second Dan black belt in karate. You really don't want to mess with me." Now listen, I respect martial arts. I've trained with people who know what they're doing, no doubt. But the second someone throws the whole "I'm a second Dan black belt" thing at you like it's some kind of magical shield, I'm already rolling my eyes. Karate's got its place, sure, but it's a bit overrated in street fights, especially when you're dealing with someone who knows how to throw punches, slip jabs, and land solid hooks. I've seen these karate guys throw those spinning kicks, but the moment you step inside their range, they're wide open. So I looked at him, and I couldn't help myself. I just said, "Second Dan, huh? That's cute, but it's not going to save you when you're getting hit for real." He didn't like that. His ego was way too big for his own good. "What did you say? You want to take this outside?" Honestly, I wasn't even in the mood for a fight. But at this point, it's like I've been handed an invitation, so I just shrugged and said, "Yeah, let's take it outside. But don't be surprised when you end up eating dirt." We stepped outside, and the alley next to the bar became the stage for whatever the hell was about to happen. A few people followed us out, probably thinking this was going to be some epic showdown. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I just wanted to teach this guy a lesson. Mr. Karate starts bouncing around, trying to act all light on his feet, doing that typical karate stance thing, where they put their hands in front of them and act like they're about to go all Bruce Lee. I know this move. I've seen it 100 times before. He started with some weak jabs, nothing that was going to land, but he was trying to measure me up. Then he did it. The classic spinning back fist. You could see it coming from a mile away, and let me tell you, it was slow as hell. I ducked under it, stepped in, and landed a solid right hook to his jaw. He stumbled but didn't go down, still trying to act like he had it under control. But now the game had changed. He was already breathing a little heavier, looking a bit less confident, and I could tell he was going for something bigger. So he tried one of those high, fancy kicks, like he was trying to channel some kind of karate champion. It was slow, wide open, and I just slipped under it, stepped inside, and hit him with a left hook to the ribs. I heard the air leave his lungs. He staggered back, gasping, his posture all wrong. It was clear he wasn't used to being in this kind of situation. This wasn't a controlled dojo where he could stop after a few punches. This was real life, and he wasn't built for it. Now he was panicking. He was trying to throw some weak kicks and punches, but they were all slow and predictable. I was just moving around him, keeping my distance. The more he tried, the more his mistakes piled up. I threw a couple more jabs, kept him off balance, and finally I landed one last shot to his body, just to finish it off. At this point, he was just standing there, looking deflated, like the air had been knocked out of him, literally. He was clutching his side, breathing heavy, and he just muttered, all right, I'm done." I took a step back, just looking at him. Yeah, you should be. Maybe stick to your dojo next time. Asshole. Senior year was a weird time. Most people were focused on graduation, college apps, all that boring stuff. Me? I somehow ended up doing an independent study with the school security guard, Frank. What did that entail, you ask? Did I learn about campus security policies? Did I study conflict resolution? Nope. My actual job was to walk around with Frank and help break up fights if they happened. Basically, I was an unpaid intern for school security. Now, let's be real. I wasn't exactly a neutral observer. I knew a lot of the guys who got into fights, and sometimes I'd have to step in before things got too wild. But one day, things went sideways real fast. One of my buddies had gotten jumped over the weekend by a bunch of absolute douchebags. Total cheap shot artists, the kind of guys who only fight when they have numbers on their side. My friend was pissed. He'd been stewing over it all weekend, just waiting for his chance to get even. So, Monday morning, Frank and I are walking through the commons during passing period. I'm chatting with him about nothing in particular when suddenly, boom! My friend winds up and clocks one of the guys who jumped him right in the face. The sound of fist meeting face is unmistakable, like a raw steak being slapped against a countertop. Instantly, the entire commons turns into a scene straight out of a movie. People are running from all directions, forming a tight circle around the fight. And me? Well, I'm supposed to break this up. But my instincts? Different story. I throw my hands in the air and yell, "Fight!" at the top of my lungs. Meanwhile, Frank, who's actually getting paid to stop this, is trying to push through the crowd. I do what any good student security intern would do. I grab him and pretend like I'm holding him back, just enough to give my friend some more time. Now, the kid my friend just hit, he's dazed, stumbling, trying to process what just happened. My friend, being an absolute menace, grabs him and shoves him toward me. I react purely on instinct. I push the guy right back toward my friend like we're playing human ping pong. And my friend? He uses that momentum to line up the nastiest right hook I've ever witnessed in person. Crack. His nose basically explodes. Blood sprays across the tile floor. 2 teeth go flying, only one of which they ever found. The other? Gone. Maybe swallowed. Maybe still lost somewhere in that school to this day. The crowd loses its mind. Phones out, people screaming, some guys jumping up and down like they just won the Super Bowl. At this point, Frank finally breaks free from my half-assed restraint and rushes in. He's yelling, trying to get control of the situation. My friend just backs up, hands in the air like, "What? Fight's over." The other guy? He's barely staying upright, holding his face, looking around like he just woke up in another dimension. Frank drags both of them to the office, and I somehow manage to avoid getting in trouble despite the fact that I very obviously encouraged all of it. Worth it. So one summer a few years back, I was invited to a birthday party at the train tracks by the Ringling Bros Circus. It was a wild party, free food and booze and all sorts of zany characters. I went there with about 20 or so bike punks from my area, and one of them happened to have just become a male stripper. Our group thought it was hilarious to pants him because he didn't give a fuck and didn't wear underwear. So it's getting to be around 3 in the morning and he gets pantsed one last time. At this point, the trainmaster get his panties in a bunch about it, saying there is children around and how it was inappropriate. Mind you, it's 3 a.m. We are on the train tracks, and he drank a whole bottle of Jack Daniels to his head. He starts screaming, "Anyone here on a bicycle has to leave, now!" The problem was that we had all free-locked to each other and find people scattered all in the train cars and tracks to unlock our bikes from themselves. We were trying our best to comply, but the logistics made it hard to satisfy the trainmaster. 3 of my friends get their bikes unlocked, and the train crew starts herding them down the train tracks. It was 2 females and a male, and they are pleading with the train crew to let them wait for us. We all finally managed to get our bikes unlocked at this point, and are following about 50 to 75 yards behind them. We can see them arguing, and all of a sudden the trainmaster just decks one of my female friends in the face. At this point, it's fucking on. We ran as fast as we could to catch up with the train crew and just start swinging. It's an all-out battle with the bike punks and the train crew. People were picking up logs and swinging them, using their chain rings on their bikes to face people, bike locks being swung about with reckless abandon. Absolute fucking insanity. So I wound up squaring up with the trainmaster himself. He was drunk as hell and swinging wildly, so it wasn't anything for me to dispatch him. I have to say, though, he was the toughest motherfucker I ever met. After 20 to 30 punches and elbows to the face, he just pops right up, blood pouring all down his face, shakes himself off and calmly says, "You're trespassing on federal property. Leave now." We were going to oblige, but I had lost my glasses in the fight and asked if I could look for them. He obviously refuses, so I call him a pussy and a sore loser, and the fight's about to break out all over again. Everyone else, weary from the scuffle, decides they don't want this to happen, so our respective peoples drag us off. I left and called one of the clowns I had just befriended to escort me back in so I can find my glasses. He helps me for about half an hour or so and gives up. He just says goodnight and leaves me alone on the train tracks. So I wound up slashing every single one of their car caravan's tires, including the trainmaster's Harley. Wasn't mean enough to do the seat, though. This is a long one, but I'll try to keep it short. It all started in Belltown, Seattle, a place jam-packed with bros, or Todds and Tiffany's, as we call them. Some friends were in town, all University of Oregon graduates, to see the football game the next day against UW. My girlfriend and I met them down there at a bar and got some drinks and hung out. The other gents wanted to go bar hopping, so we head to this joint called Copper Cart. Upon noticing that pictures were outrageous and the scene sucked and reeked of too much cologne and perfume, we exited. Upon exit, we stood on the sidewalk and started to formulate plans. While during this, my girlfriend and I notice a guy pulling a girl into an alley and holding on to her tightly. His friend follows suit and they pin her against the wall. They were obviously arguing, but being entirely too rough with her. Instantaneously, I scream, "Hey, leave her alone!" And my girlfriend screams, "Don't touch her!" Without hesitation, a-hole number one comes over. At this point, my friend holds me back, which wasn't necessary, I wasn't planning on getting physical, and says, "Don't worry, man. They're just drunk assholes." Bam! A hole number one sucker punches my buddy across the eye. A hole number one then winds up and hits my girlfriend in the chin and on the back of the head on her way down. WTF? She goes down, but thankfully not out. It's on. According to my friend, I let out a battle cry that will haunt his dreams. I'm on this guy in a heartbeat, giving hockey-style exchanging blows. A-hole number two then goes after me. But thankfully, my other friend, who has spent entirely too much time getting into fights his whole life, goes after a-hole number two. So we're meeting fists and faces. First shot from the a-hole number one was a good one. He got me square in the nose. Blackness, muffled sounds, and the warm stream of blood exiting my nose. But then I feel the sweet connection of my fist on his brow, then chin, then cheek. A-hole number two also manages to bop another buddy of ours, and he falls down. In the most comical portion of the event, he has a blood stream looking like Harry Potter on his forehead. Good job, Zach. This goes on for what seems like a while, people yelling, etc. All I focus on is kicking the shit out of this guy. Eventually, I get tackled by some fat-ass bouncer. Took them long enough. And I get my wits. My friend definitely took care of a-hole number two, who did not look good. He grabs me and says, "We gotta split before the cops get here." I won't go anywhere until I find my girlfriend. Thankfully, Zach and our friend, who somehow came out unscathed in the whole thing, grabbed her immediately and took her aside. I find her. She's shaken, but okay. I'm bleeding like hell, and my shirt is torn. We look around for the a-holes, and I ask, what happened to them? A-hole number two dragged a-hole number one into a cab. unconscious. That's what happens when your bro ass disrespects women and hits my girlfriend. I will unleash every ounce of my 6 feet 2 inches, 250-pound body on your stupid face. I suddenly realize I'll probably be arrested for mutual combat. Cop shows up, takes mine, girlfriend's, witnesses, and friends' statements, looks at me and says, "You did the right thing." We catch a cab and head home. Final toll. Me, bloody nose, fractured nose, raccoon eyes, inside right cheek cut to shit. Couldn't eat for days. Girlfriend, bruised the size of a plum and the same color, on her chin, and her first concussion of her life. Zach, Harry Potter blood trail, and muddy pants, cause he fell in a puddle. LOL, friend who got sucker punched, 7 stitches, horrible, almost 2-month black eye, broken nose, and 4 to 5 hours in the ER. Friend who took care of a-hole, number 2, busted up knuckles wrist. This guy's ridiculous. Seriously, that's all. Girl being roughed up. Took off on a sprint as soon as we shouted and they let go. A-hole number 2, not in good shape. His stripy button-down shirt covered in blood and a nice lumpy face. A-hole number 1 out fucking cold. And apparently a face like hamburger. Serves him right. Fucker. First fight of my life. We had a pretty interesting time recounting everyone's perspective the next day. A pretty cool story for all of us to share. Some hilarious thoughts and occurrences left out. All kinds of other information. Long post. Thanks for reading. If you want more, I'll tell you. When I was in high school, some guys wanted to fight my older brother. So when the fight started, it was my brother fighting one guy, one-on-one. One of the guys that didn't like him yells, "Kick that motherfucker," and they all begin kicking my brother in the face. So I jumped in out of pure instinct with nothing but fire in my gut and knocked 2 guys flat on their ass with 1 punch to the face each. Then, the other guys had a pretty good time whipping my ass. Fast forward 6 months. I see the instigator at Red Lobster while they're on Mother's Day with my mom for lunch. I had been telling my brother that if I ever saw the instigator again, I'd beat his ass on the spot. After we finished eating Mother's Day lunch with my mom, I walked over to the instigator's table, where he was sitting with a date, eating a salad. I said, "You want to go outside because I'm ready to fuck you up." It was funny because he was like a deer in the headlights in front of his date with salad dressing all over his mouth. So he gets up from the table, and I'm calmly walking towards the door. He immediately starts screaming and yelling obscenities in an attempt to let other people know what's going on. So we get to the vestibule in between the 2 sets of doors to get in the restaurant, and at this Red Lobster, there's a flight of stairs to get in the front door. So he pushes the door open and tells me to go out there, and I refused because I didn't want to get pushed down the stairs. So I turned around and punched him square in the jaw. He gets low and sort of dives at my midsection, at which point he's in the perfect position for me to get him in the headlock. So I'm standing there with the guy bent over in a headlock, and I'm ramming his head into the wall. A dishwasher and some waitresses come out, and the dishwasher grabs the other end of the guy around his waist, trying to pull him out of the headlock. We end up in an epic tug of war, where the dishwasher's pulling him in one direction, and then I yank him in the other direction and bash his head against the wall. Then another waitress comes out and says that she's called the police, so we dipped out. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. It really helps us grow the channel. And if you've got your own crazy fight stories, send them in to afistfuloffstories@gmail.com. We'd love to feature them. See you next time.